My name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guests Lindsay and Mark Reigelman. Lindsay serves as the Executive Director of the Massachusetts.During, Art and Technology Institute, otherwise known as DATMA. Mark is a highly accomplished New York City-based artist. They're both here today to inform us about Shelter 2023, which is an extremely engaging citywide collaborative venture taking place in New Bedford this summer that highlights the importance and value of shelter with regard to the history, economy, and culture of the SouthCoast region of Massachusetts. During the program, we'll be learning why and how Shelter 2023 came about, and we'll go on a behind-the-scenes tour of its 3 outdoor installations, with Mark's public artwork entitled Threshold being one of the featured displays. In so doing, we'll come to better understand and appreciate DATMA's overall mission and all that the general public can look forward to enjoying and experiencing from Shelter 2023 until October 23rd. Let's start by meeting our guests. Welcome. So delighted you're both able to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Nice to be back, Jay.
Lindsay, first of all, congratulations on DATMA's 5th anniversary and all that you, your colleagues, and collaboratives has contributed to the New Bedford area in such a short period of time. Moving forward, eager to hear all about Shelter 2023 and what you and Matt have to contribute about this ongoing initiative now. Before we start hearing about that, also think it would be of interest just to have a little more background again, a brief overview of DATMA for us, please.
Sure. Thank you again for having me on the show. I can't believe that it's year 5. I still remember every detail about our first year, and it just feels so good to be in 2023 and we've really hit our stride and locked into sharing our mission in a way that the community just truly enjoys, and us as well. My organization, DATMA, we're located in New Bedford in the South Coast, and that's where we try to have our artworks installed. Primarily they've been installed in New Bedford, but we're constantly partnering with different organizations throughout the South Coast. And I look forward to, over the next 5 years, having some of our projects like Mark Reigelman's, be in some of our neighboring cities. We want people to look at our artwork and see how it's a conversation with contemporary art, but also at the intersection of design, art, and technology. And it's fun to do that with public art. And a lot of times our work is temporary, because we're trying to get artists to kind of think outside the box of what a material can be considered, or how a material can be considered an art material. We try to use materials beyond like the marble sculpture or the mural on the wall, and have people walk by and kind of just have this sense of wonder of what they're looking at and what art should and can be. And whether you're an art person or not, we hope that kind of that goes home with you and adds to your own creative problem solving, whether it be in the arts or perhaps in some of whatever a person's interest can be. So, but it's really important for our work to be out in public spaces or publicly accessible spaces where it's free and you don't have to worry about a ticket price, and there's not limiting hours, so then parents can take their kids after they get out of work. And we just want to kind of get rid of those barriers. So many barriers are built around the arts, or the arts are cut, and we just want to be able to give arts to the community.
Well, it's been noteworthy, the efforts to that end that you and others have accomplished. It's really one of the exciting features of each year's initiative. And moving on to Shelter 2023 as a prime example, why and how did this come about?
We have a theme for our artwork each year. It's a way for us to kind of retell the story of public art and explore different maybe issues or conversations that are going on in the South Coast. We've covered wind, and we're a wind-based city with a lot of history in whaling and now a future in wind. And when we were in the heart of the pandemic, coming up with what we were going to be diving into for 2022 and 2023, that was when we were at a front row seat of the Black Lives Matter movement. And there was also a lot of light being shed on the housing crisis. And there were all these different conversations happening among different community leaders. And I have to say, I was really proud of the way that New Bedford supported its community. And we began to think of, what is a city and what is a community and what is a home and what are the values of just people creating that home and what is it in that shelter. We were very involved with a lot of the humanitarian matters that were happening during the pandemic, like homelessness. And that term became one that we needed to stop using. Everyone said, home doesn't mean a roof over your head. It doesn't mean a shelter. That can be, so please call it houselessness. And because a home is where you live and the people around you. And so those different means of defining home and shelter started to inspire us. And we started to research artists and different political topics that we wanted to discuss. And somehow everything kind of fell into place. And it was such a heavy topic to go over that it ended up being 2 years. We had a discussion in 2022 about a few different exhibitions that were a little bit more about what that had more of an architectural spin and historic root. And right now we're focused on what is it when a community can be a home. And so a lot of our work in one way or another has an entry point to different discussions about shelter and community and the people who make that a safe place to be.
Mm-hmm. Before we hear from Mark, would you just share, Lindsay, the major artists that are featured and the outdoor installations that we'll be hearing about today?
Yes, gladly. We have artists from all over the country, and then we're also presenting artists from the South Coast. We have Sylvia Lopez Chavez, who just completed our first semi-permanent project. It's a sculptural mural on Fish Island in New Bedford, which is a major entry point into the city. And Sylvia is located in Boston. She's also from the Dominican. So she spent some of her time in the DR and some of her time in Boston. And she's an incredibly talented muralist and really went and dove into exploring, what are the, what does the New Bedford community care about? And she met with many different people in the fishing industry. We worked with students from New Bedford High, and we really felt like for our first semi-permanent piece that we couldn't have found a better artist to engage with what our community cares a lot about. Our second artist was Maxwell MK's, and his piece, New Bedford, Our Woven Story, happened to turn out to be a community engagement project as well, where he collected textiles from all over New Bedford, from organizations like the Zeiterian Theater, who donated fabric from their theater seats, youth at different schools, like our sister school or New Bedford elementary schools, and different community groups who together literally as a community wove an interior of this structure that was inspired by the baobab tree and a Witu structure. And then the exterior made with sailcloth, the cloth. And Maxwell MK's is from Chicago, and he considers himself a mixed media artist, but also an activist. And I felt like we really scored when we had Maxwell apply to our first national RFQ. We had a call out to artists and gave them a budget and the location for the artwork and a topic. And I think that it was challenging for people to really dive into what shelter was all about. And Maxwell was the only artist out of every applicant who truly created a pitch about the people of New Bedford. And we again felt really lucky that he replied to that call.
Terrific.
The third project would be the Open Studios on the Sidewalk, featuring 11 South Coast artists. And I'm not sure we're going to be featuring many images from that today, but it's right along the waterfront, and it's something that greets you as soon as you get off the ferry from Martha's Vineyard.
Terrific,
Our
terrific.
headliner being Mark Reigelman, who we're thrilled about having his artwork in New Bedford, and possibly might even be our second semi-permanent piece of artwork in the city.
Nice. Well, for now, want to move on and welcome you again, Mark. So delighted to be able to be here. Before we hear all about Threshold, would you just share a little bit about your background and your artistic interests, please?
Yeah, I grew up in Sheffield Lake, Ohio, which is a small kind of working class community on the west side of Cleveland. Studied at the Cleveland Institute of Art, where I focused on industrial design and sculpture. And at the Institute is where I really found my passion for public space, and have really been focused entirely in public space since then. So about 15 years now, and very invested in public space, thinking about social engagement, social interaction. I really want my work to act as a catalyst for engagement in public space.
Before we see and talk about Threshold, could you give us a little more sense of the range and variety of your work, please?
Yeah, so I consider myself a site-specific artist, and what that means is I come to a site without a preconceived notion of what should exist, and through meticulous site research, community engagement, site analysis and investigation, I try to create projects and installations that are really tethered to the site conceptually and formally. So I really want the site to inform color, material selection, scale, longevity, and in doing that process allows me to explore a lot of different materials in a lot of different places. So while if you were to look at my portfolio, it's a little bit overwhelming because of the scale and variety of the work, but you can kind of see threads of color and threads of aesthetics woven through. But again, the main focus of my work is to be really tethered to the site and the community that use it on a daily basis, both conceptually and formally. So that's kind of how I approach each and every site.
Well, that definitely comes through with Threshold. What attracted you to DATMA to be part of Shelter 2023?
So DATMA reached out to me a while back and said, something like, we're a young company. We do really cool projects. We'd love for you to join us on an adventure. And I was like, well, all right, tell me more. And they're like, well, how about you come up to New Bedford for a weekend? If you'd like it, let's work together. And so I did that. I got to visit the site. I got to visit the variety of bars and restaurants, the Whaling Museum. And I left there really blown away by the architecture, history. And I think I left by saying, let's do a project together. This is awesome. And so, yeah, I was drawn in pretty quick. I'm kind of a history nerd, and I like to make sure that I spend a lot of time understanding how a site develops over time. And as you know, New Bedford history is an unbelievably wild one. And so it was very enjoyable to kind of peruse the history books in that area. And so, as you know, the theme was predetermined, shelter. And so I kind of reviewed the history with this kind of colored lens in place. And so I'm trying to understand this history as it relates to the theme. And one thing that kind of was reoccurring in this research was, this was a place historically for people looking for shelter. That's either people kind of fleeing from religious persecution, or folks that have been out on the water for days, weeks, or years at a time, looking for a warm fireplace to sit next to. That also includes folks running away from slavery in the South and looking for a home, looking for a place that they can start a family and start a new adventure. And so there's a number of these ideas or histories in New Bedford. And as I saw that, I wanted to try to figure out kind of a simple visual metaphor to capture this welcoming history. And the doorway just seemed like the perfect place to start, especially as you walk around New Bedford and see the beautiful entryways that just look so welcoming. I mean, it's hard not to go knock on the doors just to chat with the owners inside. And so the door was really kind of a perfect place to start. And then from there, it was just figuring out that door design.
What are some of the materials that you used in the construction?
Yeah, so I wanted the feel to be as authentic as possible. So we explored a number of ways that would have been much easier to fabricate this, like fiberglass, for instance. But there was a level of authenticity that really seemed absolutely imperative for the success of the work. So this has a steel substructure, but then the entire work is clad in wood. So when you touch it and feel it, it feels like, you know, it feels like a material that would be actually used in fabrication. So you can still see the wood grain in places. The movement of the material shifts over time as wood does in public space. What was fun about this project is because of the scale and the desire to have these details scale up accurately, every single molding detail was custom CNC. So it's the most customized work I've ever, the most customized project I've ever worked on. And so that's the kind of what you're seeing most is all that custom woodwork. And then in all of those little panels are all mirrored acrylic, so colored mirrored acrylic, blue on one side, and then you know, vibrant colors on the back side. And so, yeah, exactly. So you kind of see this two-sided doorway. The goal here was on the blue side, I wanted the work to kind of be connected to the water and the watery history, because that really is primary for this community. And so you get a lot of blue on the one side, on the front side, and it's facing the water and facing the rising sun. And on the back side, you get more of a monochromatic aesthetic with the transom above, this really beautiful, colorful tapestry. And so that to me is kind of the future of New Bedford, right? This beautiful kind of woven fabric perched up high and celebrated, looking down on pedestrians.
And I know another feature you wanted to bring to this structure is interactive, to make it something available to the general public and really reach out and engage. A few words about that aspect, please.
So all my works are meant to be very interactive. I mean, in part, it's because I'm trying to reach a diverse audience. I kind of joke that I'm trying to have a conversation through my art with my mother, who has no art education or background whatsoever, and with my art professor. And at the same time, I want my daughters to leave with a positive experience too. So the work is very layered, but I wanted folks to like see it from a distance, be drawn in, look at their reflection in all these mirrors. I mean, there's also kind of a strong metaphor for this as well. It's like we want the public to see themselves in the work, and we want this work to represent every single person that comes to it. So Mirrored Surfaces has that quality. You can also see the sky in a different way, because as you look up at that blue transom, it's reflecting the passing clouds, it's reflecting the seagulls. You could see the trees reflecting in it as well. So it does make for a very dynamic, engaging, and interactive sculpture.
What's been some of the reaction, feedback, or observations you've made about people interacting, being a part of Threshold?
I mean, overall, people kind of get it right away. You know, they kind of step up to the doorway. I feel like I see people pause because crossing a threshold should not be taken lightly, right? It's the start of a new adventure. And so I see people kind of pause, kind of take in this overwhelming experience, because this sculpture is over 17 feet tall. So it is quite massive. And then they kind of cross that threshold. I think the comment I've heard most that I found very interesting, because I wasn't expecting it, was, which side should I enter from? And so and at first I just assumed that everyone would enter from the blue side, just based on, you know, its relationship to the park and how it's situated, and the opening of the door. But that's been the biggest factor, or the most interesting critique I've had, or commentary, was, you know, which side should we enter from? And I kind of just was like, well, whichever side you think is the right beginning for your adventure. And so, you know, that's been a fun feedback.
Wonderful, wonderful. And before we move on, a few of your thoughts about the role, the value, the benefits of installations like yours and others, public art.
I mean, I think Lindsay and DATMA we certainly have a lot of overlap in terms of our mission generally about public art. I mean, I think there's kind of two layers to this. Public space is absolutely crucial. If we didn't know that before the pandemic, we certainly found that out during the pandemic. There's no more important space than public space. And so good public space will allow people to relax and just enjoy nature, and good public art will kind of add that next layer, allow people to contemplate, reconsider their surroundings and their space, their place in the environment. And so I see public art as acting as that catalyst for social interaction in a day where, you know, our entire lives are online, and that can be a scary place. Being able to see another human in real life and have a conversation with strangers is imperative. And so I think public art can do that best. So I think that there is no more important creative endeavor than public art and public space.
Well, congratulations on Threshold. So glad you decided to visit New Bedford for that weekend,
Yeah, me too.
and made this wonderful contribution to Shelter 2023.
Thanks, Jay.
Lindsay, getting back to the other artists that you gave a little introduction to, just a few more words as we enjoy some images of our woven story, Maxwell MK's work.
Gladly. You know, I think that just to touch a little bit on the conversation that we were just having about what public art can do, I think about all the different ways that in the process of creating this artwork by Maxwell MK's, you know, he had taken a great leap in trying to create a piece of artwork about a community. And in that, even though he is not from New Bedford, and I applaud all of our artists who were able to accomplish that this year, because it's not an easy feat, especially in a community that is so tight-knit. And I think that, you know, Maxwell really saw that and spent several months visiting the city and doing community engagement. And, you know, you really see that when you're inside a sculpture, you know, every single piece of textile woven together and locked in. And it, you know, it makes you think of that, saying, you know, the community fiber, you know, it's a lovely outcome of the symbolism of what it means when a community gets together to make something together. And now what I think you're not seeing are some of the things, some of the curatorial decisions that we make. You know, we had Mark Reigelman's work in a park that was a former parking lot, and before that a parking garage. And, you know, green spaces are crucial in creating places for community engagements and activation. And Maxwell's piece also is a place where people can gather and have like these meditative moments. It also, it's funny and it's attractive because it has these neon lights that are not very formal in the world of formal art. So when you're across the street and you're at the ferry, which is where you know, a lot of people use New Bedford as a place to come to leave. And you can't help but be drawn across this really intimidating pedestrian sidewalk over a highway that the city is working on turning into a boulevard to try to attract people to across the street, to go to businesses, to go to the restaurants, and just walk a few blocks of this beautiful historic city with lots of small businesses and cultural organizations. And so we have Mark Reigelman's piece in a park that is a couple blocks up from the historic district. Maxwell MK's piece is right on the corner of the downtown, another major entry point of the city. And, you know, we thought about putting Sylvia Lopez's piece on a few other locations, but that being another entry point to the city just kind of draws people in and immediately tells you that, you know, this is a place where people have something to say. You know, and across the street from this is the Open Studios on the Sidewalk exhibition of several artists from the South Coast who create an artist community that is a shelter for many. The artist community was what drew me here. And it's something that has been able to keep me here. I mean, I'm from Rochester, New York originally, and lived in a few different corners of the country. And I really did not anticipate just falling in love with this area and becoming so passionate about helping the community grow. And it's pieces like this and projects that DATMA accomplishes and that we produce that feeds the optimism and energy that I have to continue to year 10. So we're pretty proud of year 5 and being able to accomplish what we have. And we would not have been able to do it without the support from City of New Bedford and the Department of Public Infrastructure, who answers my phone calls when I say, hey, we need somebody to dig a hole in your beautiful new sidewalk so then we can pour concrete as an anchor for art so it doesn't blow away. And they think we're nuts, but they think it's worth it, and they show up. So it's support like that people don't see. Public art gives you a little bit of a front row seat to that process, but I mean, if you're not there on that day, you don't see it, and we don't want you to. I mean, it's the magic of the artwork. We just want you to focus on that. But it's
terrific,
really been a joy
terrific.
to work with these artists this year.
Well, I know there's much more we could hear about Maxwell's work, but in just a few minutes left, want to hear a little bit more about the work of Sylvia Lopez Chavez and others who contributed to this incredible mural here.
Yeah, Sylvia Lopez Chavez had worked with several photographers from the area: Phil Mello, Peter Pereira, Andrew Kopinski, and those 3 had offered her portraits of different people from New Bedford. And she kind of looked at them for a few different reasons, composition, looking for diversity, gender, age. But it was funny that when all of the, cards were spread out on the table, she ended up picking community members that, I mean, if you're from New Bedford, you know who each one of these people are. I mean, it's not really about that. We want you to see yourself in these people. But it's beautiful to have, this guy, Paula, who's been in the fishing industry. And, what you don't see is by Paula's feet are like huge, big barrels of fish. Here we are, we have a man cutting out a scallop out of its shell. And the Nordic Explorer is a huge ship in the harbor. And I mean, there's every single one of these images, again, it represents ourselves, but it also tells the story of New Bedford. The guy in the beanie, that's Jay Vasconcellos, who was one of the first people to open up a store downtown when it was really not a place we wanted to visit. It's this great skate shop named Solstice. And I mean, the New Bedford Symphony, incredible experience, and certainly a lot of talent, and many who are in the Boston Symphony. So just all of these people who are genuine community members and representing what the city cherishes. It was a joy to watch this composition come together. And we had a lot of help with this piece. I mean, we worked with New Bedford High. We worked with a mural group called Superflat, who has been putting murals all over New Bedford. And we wouldn't have been able to move forward with a mural type piece without their crew helping to prep the walls and help with the beautiful ombre siding. And I mean, it took a lot of team members to be able to make it to that June 22nd deadline. And somehow we did it. But this is a very special year.
Terrific, terrific. Well, I know there's much more going on, future programming all the way till October 23rd. Encourage people to go to your website, which we'll have in the credits, to find out more and make their way over these next few months. Plenty of time to experience and enjoy Shelter 2023. So in closing, just want to thank both of you again for taking time to be here. Congratulations on another amazing accomplishment, and look forward to visiting sometime soon.
Thanks, Jay.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us, and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.